systems healthcare, and that's how you kind of got started into cause. So can you talk to me a little bit about systems healthcare?
Yeah, so systems healthcare is the best thing in healthcare that nobody knows about. Now,
Yes.
I have to preface this by saying this is not my technique. This technique was founded by Dr. Stephen Gangemi. He still practices today. He is one of the best, if not the best, doctors that I have been around. He's been practicing for 27 years, I think now. You know, he's actually gotten to learn from a lot of the greats, but he himself, through his work, has actually become one of the, I think, greatest teachers and kind of pioneers in the holistic healthcare world. Systems healthcare really is a combination of things learned from applied kinesiology. And, you know, one of the things that we talk about in school is there's a number of different kind of levels when it comes to like the evidence-based healthcare. You have the person that's going to do research on what's happening in the clinic. So you have that person that's kind of observing and then kind of, reading, writing, all those things. You have the person that's studying that research. Okay. And then you, lastly, and maybe most importantly, you have the actual clinician who's actually in the front lines working with people. And a lot of times people are learning from the research. They're doing their own research, which is good, and they're reading the research, which is good. But being on the front lines, being in the room with people, being the one that's getting the hands on and working with people and getting to the bottom of things, that person will always, 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 always be the most evidence-based because they're working with people who, every person is extremely different, and they're actually there just getting, again, hands-on and getting right into things. And so when we look at like Dr. Stephen Gangemi, for example, practicing 27 years, the amount of things that someone can learn over that time when they start their career with some kind of technique that helps them get to the root of things. And then, of course, they help a lot of people. There might be some people that they aren't able to help, but then they learn from that. And so if they have a case, let's say, that has some kind of chronic gut issue, and for whatever reason, they're not able to help that, well, they learn from that. And then years down the road, they continue to learn, continue to discover different things. And then you get to a point where now what in the past was maybe really difficult to get to the bottom of, now we're really able to get to the bottom of it quite easily. So 27 years of experience, to me, just speaks volumes. You can't read enough books to gain that much information and value. And so he's taken all that he's learned. He got to work with Wally Schmidt, who I'll share a little bit about him in a little bit. A lot of the systems healthcare technique is also built off of Wally Schmidt and what he was doing with his techniques. And so that's systems healthcare. There's about 18 people in the country right now. I think it's 18 certified in the technique, which blows my mind. And again, it's not a technique I knew anything about until I got to school. And they said, yeah, that's systems healthcare. And I was like, what was that? And I first kind of shadowed a couple of times even with one of my mentors and colleagues now, and watched him do systems healthcare on people. And one of the interesting thing about systems healthcare is we don't do any adjusting. Like we don't do any popping, which as a chiropractor, I feel like I'm going against my own people. But when you understand that the nervous system is built off of our internal system, as well as our fascial system, if you address those two things, you don't even have to pop things. The spine will go back into alignment, all the inflammation will go away, and your nervous system will heal itself. I got to learn that, of course, as I was a patient originally. And then when I became sold on this approach and started learning it, I just saw it day after day after day with patients that, they might come in with a neck or hip issue or whatever. Most of the time, adjusting it would help. It would release some tension and stuff with the tissues. But ultimately, if you work through the fascia and you balance out the fascia, but then also figure out what's triggering things internally, not only will the pain and the soreness and all that go away, it'll actually stay gone because you're actually getting to the root of the issue. So that's one of the things I love about systems healthcare. Again, it just is able to get to the root of the issue. And there's other good and amazing techniques out there. I would say there's maybe one or two other different techniques, but I would say systems healthcare is definitely one of the best techniques in the world.
That's awesome. So I know you talked a little bit about how applied kinesiology goes into systems healthcare. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Applied kinesiology was founded by a gentleman named Dr. George Goodheart. So Dr. George Goodheart was a chiropractor, and he was always reading, always researching, always studying. He essentially, the first scenario here, he had a patient that had a winged scapula. which basically means, so as he would look at the back of the patient, one of the scapula, one of the shoulder blades would kind of wing out a little bit. And he was thinking to himself, okay, so the serratus anterior muscle, which attaches on the front of the ribs and then goes around back to the shoulder blade, the scapula, that muscle obviously is not activated. He took the patient's arm, put it in a certain position to where he could test that muscle. And he basically said, all right, patient, I want you to hold this muscle strong. He pressed on it and that muscle was not activated. He tried it the same thing with some other muscles and they would activate, they would lock in. And so he went in there and he palpated in the muscle of the serratus anterior and he found a bunch of little nodules, little trigger points. So he massaged all those out. He tested the muscle again. It was activated. He had the patient stand up again, put his hands on the wall and basically activate those muscles to see and really put the shoulder blade in a position to where we could see if it was winging or not. And scapula, the shoulder blade, was no longer winging. And so that's where he kind of that was in about 1964. He discovered basically this muscle testing component. And over the following years, he started to he just took that and he just ran with it so far. He started realizing that you can use that obviously to check what might need adjusted, if there's different work with the muscles that need to be done. He started realizing you can test the nervous system through the muscles. After he realized, again, like everything with the muscles and the fascia, the joints, all these things, he started getting into those relationships with organs. And he discovered that, hey, there's actually, based on embryological development, which is, development as we're a fetus, we're in our mom and we're developing, there's connections that form between muscles and organs. And so he discovered that. And that's why, for example, when people have chronic back issues, low back issues, they usually have gut issues. When you have that inflammation in the gut, it causes the core muscles to not be activated. And if your core is not activated, then you have an unstable core. If you have an unstable core, now you start developing disc issues in the low back. The vertebra all kind of tighten up with the paraspinal muscles and results in all kinds of issues. There was also the discovery of what's called neurolymphatic reflexes. These are also referred to as Chapman's reflexes. So Dr. Frank Chapman was an osteopathic doctor, and he realized there are different reflexes on the body related to different organs, that if you treat those reflexes manually by massaging the reflex deeply, it'll actually stimulate and support that organ temporarily. And so Dr. George Goodheart took those and started working with those. You take his work there, fast forward to today, which is, almost, I guess essentially 61 years from the original, kind of muscle test being learned and discovered there. And now we have things like systems healthcare and a variety of other different techniques and approaches that are really, really stinking cool at getting to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
There's times when it doesn't matter what lab test someone's done. If they've spent all the money in the world doing the best lab tests in the world, it sometimes still won't get to the bottom of things as quickly and as efficiently as systems healthcare can. So that goes back again, though, to applied kinesiology, the muscle testing, a lot of the basic reflexes there. All of those things are what Dr. Stephen Jimmy had going into practice. And he took that, things he learned from Wally Schmidt, who was one of his mentors and he practiced with for quite a while, and just kind of put everything together and continued to learn and grow. Wally Schmidt was Dr. George Goodhart's best friend and neighbor growing up. And so while Dr. George Goodhart passed away in 2008, Wally Schmidt, who was again his best friend, continued practicing for almost 10, 12 years later, 12 or 13 years later. Unfortunately, Dr. Wally Schmidt passed away within the last 5 years. I don't have the specific year on the top of my head, but recently within the past few years. And it was a big moment for the history of applied kinesiology. Dr. Wally Schmidt discovered so many things. And he has his own technique called quintessential applications, which has, I don't know the technique. I've been exposed to it a little bit, but it's one of those techniques, again, that's very good. It uses the nervous system to get to the bottom of things. And